Picture this. You're studying. Broken posture from the crash of the 3 cans of Monster you drank 10 hours ago when you sat down and opened your textbook. The words on your notebook begin to blur. Sentences need to be read 3 or 4 times to really sink in as the clock flips past 2 a.m. You have an exam tomorrow. You've put off studying until the last minute, and now you're finding the karma that you knew would come. Then, the pressure sets in. You could have avoided this. This is your fault. You begin to beat yourself up for your ceaseless procrastination that has haunted you all semester. You begin to catastrophize. Why are you even in this class? What is it even that you hope to get out of your degree? That is, if you can even get it. Is it even worth it? Giving up just looks so easy. I and many other people with anxiety will find this scene more relatable than we'd like, and those without anxiety likely understand at least part of it. The pressure to be something, and the pressure to constantly be more, even if working would be less healthy than taking a break. It's perfectionism, and for many of us, it digs away at our brain until there isn't much left. The endless drive to be something more often backfires on itself, warping into self-hate, impatience, and irritability. But what if that fog, that dark, looming cloud that tells us we weren't enough? What if it was a physical threat? Looking Up, I See Only a Ceiling is a game by Relapse Games made in 2023 that explores just that. We play as an unnamed student attending college, subject to the very same stresses, pressure, and constant looming threat of failure I've just described. Thrust into a Silent Hill-esque journey into our consciousness, it's up to us to get our lives together. Looking Up, I See Only a Ceiling, which from here on out I will be calling Luisok, is a relatively tame video game when it comes to visuals. However, there is some pretty disturbing imagery, ideas, and scenes, so I'll be putting a content warning on screen now for all of that. If you find any of these topics to be disturbing, you have been warned. Luisok and its DLC, The Relapse, can be purchased on Steam for just $3 combined. The entire game is in a vertical aspect ratio and is about 2 hours long on your first playthrough. This is one of those games that I highly recommend you play before you watch this video. If that isn't an option for you, I will link my first blind playthrough in the description below. Without further ado though, let us begin with the story of Looking Up, I See Only a Ceiling. We open the game to the rather memorable main menu. I chose to include this because this frame in particular is important for later, as is the name of the game. However, it's not very easy to describe without spoiling the story. For now, just keep this image in mind. It will help understand some things later. The game begins with our character asleep. Some broken speech alerts us to a figure standing over us. His presence and pleas for us to wake up eventually, well, waking us up. We rise from our bed and prepare to start our day, writing off the figure as just a dream, and we are instructed to go and have breakfast. Throughout the entire game, there are a multitude of interactables we can click on to learn a little bit of information about our character and her life. The vast majority of them are relatively pointless to the entire story, such as talking about her favorite plant and how it's a nice day outside. But I will include all of the points I think are important to address in this story. Exploring our bedroom, we can gauge that our character is a relatively positive person. She confidently states that today will be a great day. Many of the objects in her room are specifically placed there because, as she states, they calm her. At her desk, we see that she has many textbooks and diagrams set up for what she reveals as studies for her anatomy class and upcoming exam. A small note here is that there are reportedly some anime and manga books mixed in with the study books here. This will be important to a theory of mine at the end of the video, but I just have to bring it up because it's important. Heading out into the hallway, we can see some boxes sitting on the floor. As far as I'm aware, the contents of these are never revealed, but I'm going to guess that they are either books or moving boxes that she's yet to unpack. This just serves as a small peek into this character's relationship with procrastination that will be expanded upon later in the game. This is continued at our front door, where mail and newspapers have been piling up a bit. Our character continues to describe how her choice of decoration is not just to calm her, but to help keep her focused. In the hallway in our kitchen, there are more boxes that she claims have been there for a long time, just a little more weight on the pile of stuff she's been putting off. Entering our kitchen, we are instructed to prepare breakfast. Interestingly, we are forced to completely restart our actions if we do them in the quote-unquote wrong order. But at least in the breakfast our character chooses to make for herself, the order doesn't really matter. She gets her coffee first, then some eggs and bacon from the fridge, which she magically cooks despite not having a stove, and then sits down and eats. But what confuses me is why the game forces us to get the coffee first, and why our character is so insistent in doing things in the right order. What some may think is just a simple puzzle, I think is meant as a reflection of the meticulous nature of our character. This insistence on order is lightly padded throughout the story, and I think it's more important than just a gameplay mechanic. This simply looks like discipline right now, which is good to have, but as with most things, can backfire if you force yourself into it. Heading back to the sink to wash our dishes, we are finally reminded that this is in fact a horror game. In our sink, there are some reportedly dirty scissors covered in... is that blood? For some reason, our character doesn't comment on this, but maybe it's nothing, I guess? It's not nothing. Attempting to leave our kitchen, we appear in a hallway that is not the one we came from. Our inviting plants and cozy paintings are gone, replaced with the stark black hallway with nothing but a calendar painted with an arrow on the wall. We can't go back. The door to our kitchen is gone and we have no choice but to press forward. Around the corner, there is a hallway full of disordered textbooks and calendars hung up on the walls. Random dates are circled and X'd out. The area is in complete disarray. The next room is even worse. There is a massive pile of anatomy textbooks that our character has to clamber over. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to think that our character might be a little more stressed about this upcoming anatomy exam than she might let on. We approach the door labeled as an exit only to find ourselves in yet another confusing room. Even more calendars are scattered around the room, with a man sitting on the far side of the desk, who our character describes as being familiar. He gets up from his desk and just absolutely beefs it in front of us. Yikes. Whew. That was rough to watch. Our character seems to recognize the dates circled here. With it being June, maybe it's the exam. However, we are interrupted by the man taking it back and greeting us. It's the same man from the opening scene. The man thanks us for handing him the calendar and claims, rather intensely, that he needs them. Asking him where we are, he claims that he doesn't know, and just instantly goes with our character's question of if this is a library. This is a library, of sorts. My theory is that this is simply our character's brain, or the physical manifestation of their thoughts. It's cluttered, surrounded with constant reminders of an ever-looming future deadline. The walls are all featureless, and there's zero decoration. After all, she wouldn't want to distract herself from her studies now, would she? This whole scene, I think, is the beginning of our character being confronted with the truth of how her life is really going. She may think that she's doing alright, making breakfast, reading manga, and having an overall positive outlook on life, but it's all a facade. A facade designed to try and ignore her feelings and block out the stress school has been putting on her. And this man? This is our conscience. An undeterred force in our brain designed to help us do the right thing and take the right path in life. Right now, he's been left scrambling to pick up the mess that is our brain since we clearly can't do it alone. Him describing that he spends the whole day in this place reading books and marking the calendar reinforces this even more. He's stuck reflecting our character's actions. She's been forcing herself to study to a level that is clearly unhealthy. We get to see this especially later with a few actions she's taken to force herself to learn, even if it's hurting her. The man has spent all day reading and thinking of the deadlines because she has. We can attempt to speak to him multiple times, which only greets us with more confusion. This man is kind of losing it due to the conditions we've forced him in. So in time, it will be our job to help him escape, while simultaneously helping ourselves. We leave the manifestation of our brain and conscience and appear back in our home. Our character writes it off as just exhaustion and sets off for the bathroom. We have to find the key to the bathroom. It's locked because our character claims she didn't want to open it with the storm that happened last night. However, after searching our room, we find it hidden in one of our textbooks. Our character shockingly claims that she keeps it here to force herself to keep studying, and to force herself to focus. The previous attempts to keep her focused, the plants, pictures, and ordered living were all fine and healthy, but this is incredibly unsafe to do. She's literally valuing her studies over her body's basic functions, which should absolutely come first. The cluttered state of her brain and panicked conscience is starting to make a whole lot more sense. Before we are allowed to leave, something catches our eye at the window. It's the man again, this time standing outside the window. Interesting though, and we don't see this until much later, we are on the second floor of this building, so how he's up here is rather confusing. Nothing happens here despite him ominously pointing up. We can't hear him, but I think this gesture is a light reminder to be positive. It is here where I will explain the meaning of the title of the game. As a way to combat stress and anxiety, a common saying is to look forward or up to the future and try to be realistic with ourselves. The phrase, "looking up, I see only a ceiling," implies that our character struggles with a decent bit of hopelessness. This will be shown much more heavily later, but the fact she only sees a ceiling shows that she can't see a way out of her situation, or that her future is just boring. She studies because she feels she has to, and if she doesn't, she'll be deemed a failure, even if this thought is unrealistic. Our conscience telling us to look up, but us refusing, makes a lot of sense here. He's telling us that there really is something up there, something to look forward to, but right now, we just can't see it. Returning to the bathroom to freshen up, there are a few things to note. First, this is the first good look we get of our character, who doesn't look too hot right now. And second, she offhandedly says that the mouthwash she uses stings a little due to some possible inflammation. Just another reminder that she's been neglecting her health. Stepping away from the sink, the room suddenly begins to shake. A massive pit opening up in the ground beneath us. Ghastly dark hands reach from the pit and grab our character by the neck. But just as soon as they arrive, they're gone, and our character gathers herself in the bathroom as the pit still remains. Conveniently, the door behind us is locked again. Along with the pit, a dark red liquid resembling blood begins seeping from the ceiling. In the bathtub, there is now a mannequin, which the character claims is in the exact position she would lay in. Inspecting the pit, we ominously find a pair of eyes staring at us from the void. This is the physical manifestation of pressure and stress I mentioned would be part of this story. This inky black form coming from the floor is meant to represent this. If looking up is a positive outlook, I think this is meant to imply that looking below is a negative outlook. Our character is constantly expecting to fail, and it's that constant pressure that is now literally seeping into the facade of a comfortable life she's built for herself. She's made the effort to try and change her environment and external factors to help her mindset. But in all this, she's failed to address the growing weight of doubt in her brain. Like I said, giving up is really easy and can often feel inviting. That's why the pit isn't doing anything but staring at her, patiently waiting for her to give in herself. We are interrupted again by the man grabbing our shoulder. We finally demand some answers. Is he a friend or foe? He denies that he came from the pit and doesn't answer if he came from the door, simply stating that he's been watching us for a very long time. I've already explained how this man is our conscience, but I think this line in particular is simply showing the viewer that this issue isn't new. Our character has had to struggle with these thoughts for a very long time to get it to this point, and our conscience has been there trying to get us out the whole time. The man shows us a clock and tells us that our time is running out. It may be a little frustrating that he isn't explaining everything to the protagonist in order to save her, but that's because if he did, it's unlikely she would learn as well as if she fully experienced what's about to happen. Our character accuses the man of locking her in the room, but I don't think this is the truth. I think the man actually did come from the door. What actually happened here was that our character locked herself in. After looking in the mirror, she began to spiral. Whether this be appearance related or not, looking into the mirror is a sentimental moment for a lot of people, and I think that's what happened here as well. She locked herself in with her self-doubt, and our conscience was the only thing to help by opening the door for us. We beg him for a way out, to which he describes what I've already said. This place helps us think, backing up my theory that this is, at least the fantastical stuff, is all in her head. He says that this place is to help us remember something important that we forgot. What that means is, well, herself. She's been so enamored and drowned in her studies that she's failed to build up her personality and livelihood in a healthy way. Again, the plants and paintings are all superficial and don't truly help. What she needs is locked inside. The man's sentence is conveniently cut off by a noise from the pit, which he honestly seems pretty chill about, sarcastically commenting that it's that time again. He says he has faith in us and tells us to, quote, break the loop. He's talking about what I mentioned a second ago, about how this isn't the first time this has happened. There isn't a time loop or any science fiction-y bullshit happening here. This is simply what happens inside our character's head every time she spirals. Though a little on the nose, maybe this is a physical representation of a panic attack. I've had the same thing happen to me in the past. My mom died just a month before finals week in my spring semester of college, and that combined with the already mounting stress from the 4 classes I was taking resulted in many panic attacks basically every night. And let me tell you, when you're mid-panic attack, you obviously aren't thinking straight, and would most certainly forget or ignore your conscience. While they definitely can be, most panic attacks are not learning experiences for the people who have them. No, they only serve to make a bad situation worse, comparable to a sickness. We finally escape the bathroom using this newly unlocked door. The fact that both the man and our character were able to leave through it only reinforces my idea that the man was the one to either break in or just open it for us from the outside. Our character comments that she can hear the sound of water coming from somewhere else in the house. She doesn't know if it's real or if she's imagining it in her exhaustion, but decides to canvass the house for any issues. In the hallway to the kitchen, the source of water is revealed as the hallway window literally cracks under the pressure and suddenly begins to let in water. Water quickly fills the apartment, and we need to find a way out and fast. The various other windows are too high to jump from, and the front door won't budge. Our house keys have mysteriously gone missing, and this brute force is getting us nowhere. Well, you know the saying. There's nowhere else to go but up. It's time to finally explore what's in our ceiling. We find the hook in our bedroom closet and open the hatch to the attic in the hallway. The ceiling is not an inviting place. A seemingly endless expanse confronts us with many other attic hatches around. A few of the hatches have corpses posed as if they were just about to escape something chasing them from below, much like us. This is the first instance of the plot zooming out and addressing the issue of stress and anxiety on a broader scale than just our character. This issue is not unique, and many people find it impossible to escape. These visuals are a way of showing our character the results of her previous experiences here. She may not remember due to the panic, but along with the representation of the other students' experiences, the corpses are also a reminder of how she's failed before. It's almost taunting her. A door in the distance invites us, but on the way to reach it, our character stops. The hands from earlier begin to crawl out of the hatch behind her and reveal themselves to be a monster with the head of an analog clock. I mean, if the symbolism isn't obvious here, I don't know what to tell you. This is the deadlines. The marks on the calendar and pressure to study manifesting into a physical monster. It tackles and restrains us and, well, consumes us. This is the bad ending of the game, the result of another failed opportunity and another lesson went unlearned. But obviously, this isn't what we were supposed to do. Going back to the escape sequence from the flood, we can also retrieve the scissors along with the hook and enter the ceiling again. During our grapple with the monster, we are able to use them to free ourselves for just long enough to reach the door. We run for the door and... what? We appear back in our bathroom, where our character sits up from their position in the tub. The attic trap door is suddenly gone. As we see later, we aren't on the top floor of this apartment either, so it wouldn't make sense for there to be an attic anyways. Our character claims she feels relieved, like a weight has been lifted from her shoulders, and so the game ends. Our character, backed up by the positive force of her conscience, ventures out into the world, ready to kick this exam's ass. But what was that all about? Well, though it may be overdone, this is in fact an "it was all a dream" scenario. Remember the main menu image? This is the exact position our character was in the whole time. Whether it be an attempt to relax or recover from a spiraling episode, she began to either dissociate or fall asleep in the tub from all the stress. That was what the water flooding her apartment from earlier was from. Her head slipped below the water, and so began a literal race against time to wake herself up and, well, not drown. I think this was more likely dissociation rather than sleep because of the mannequin. Seeing it is a literal out-of-body experience for our character, and that's likely what she felt like in the moment. An empty shell of a person after her brain had completely abandoned her except for her conscience. If we take a closer look at the door during our escape sequence, we can spy some bubbles around the edges, reinforcing this idea of saving herself even more. We weren't just conquering our stress, we were saving our own lives the whole time. And that brings us to the end of Louisoak. The DLC, The Relapse, is up next. An important thing to note before going into this part of the game, the perspective of this game shifts to a broader view of the student experience as a whole that I was talking about earlier. There's going to be a lot more to talk about in the DLC, trust me, it's way better written and it's way more in depth, so get ready. Also, instead of our conscience being a simple guiding light, he becomes a much more active help, especially towards the end of the story. Also, the gore amps up by like a factor of 10, so you've been warned. In order to start the DLC, we must venture out into the innocently designed Explore mode that the game has. This part of the game is not super important to the lore of everything, so I'll be skipping through a lot of it, but there are still some important things I'd like to touch on. Explore mode begins with our character returning to her apartment after doing some grocery shopping. She is visibly uplifted and happier as this takes place after the events of the original game. She says that, despite having a more hopeful outlook on things, she still thinks about that day. Just how much, we'll see in a bit. The character describes what we already know. The trapdoor in her hallway never existed. It was made up in her mind and, in her words, was a boundary between her and her problems. It was most literally an escape hatch from her existing circumstances. She confidently states that she is ready to move on with her life and leave the events of the ceiling in the past. In her bedroom, we can find that she still keeps her study materials out despite saying that she had passed the exam with the highest grade. She sort of ominously states that she might never take down the anatomy posters, a slight hint about what's to come. There's a funny Easter egg in her closet where we can find what I assume are the developers of the game in a hidden room behind a false floor. The hallway to the kitchen is where things become a little bit more interesting. There are a few calendars mysteriously strewn across the floor with their signature red markings. Suspicious, but maybe it's nothing. The calendars continue to litter the floor in the kitchen as well. Inspecting the calendars on the fridge, our character describes how the man was, in fact, a force of good, and rather bluntly confirms my theory of him being her conscience. I think these calendars are both here as a light warning about what's about to happen, as well as a memento left behind by her conscience. The calendars all lay across the floor as if they were trampled on, which I think perfectly shows how our character conquered the fear of that deadline. We can see our character again in the bathroom mirror. She looks noticeably happier, and the dark hands on her shoulders are gone now. Finally, if we return to the front door and continue to click on the handle, our character decides that it's time to officially move on and step outside. Stop hiding in her house, where she's subject to ceaseless rumination and memories of what happened, and start accepting the real world. A short cutscene tells us that, while things were better, the character's situation wasn't fully fixed. It prepares us for another challenge, saying that life reserves us challenges where we never look. I mean, come on, did you really think an issue to this level would be fixed overnight? We may have made a lot of progress in fixing that issue, but a part of it is still there, waiting for its chance to be lured out and strike again. We step out into the hallway of our apartment, and it is revealed that our character has another exam coming up soon. We can tell that she's definitely still struggling with the self-doubt and anxiety even after her experience as well, with her stating that she wants to meet some students in her apartment and make friends, but doesn't know if it's possible due to her personality. A major issue that a lot of people with anxiety deal with is the action of stopping yourself before you can even try something. It's called avoidant behavior, and stems from an overwhelming sense of self-doubt, making you step out of the race before the gun even fires. This sort of black and white thinking is also pretty prevalent. You'd be surprised how many statements you say daily that fall into this trap. Stuff like, oh, sports just aren't my thing, or I'm not a great cook, sorry, or yeah, I'm just not a math person, really. It all creates this idea that not only are you not these things, but you never will be either. In some cases, this is fine. I likely will never enjoy watching or playing football in my life, and I'm okay with that. But with more serious things, it can cause the self-doubt to spiral out of control. Things like convincing yourself you're not good enough for your crush, or that you won't be able to get that raise at work. It all compounds on itself until it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Unfortunately, the loneliness factor of this game's story isn't really touched on nearly as much as the other stuff, but I think it's just as important. For now though, let's continue with exploring the apartment and head to our exam room. The theme of the calendars has been pretty beaten to death by now, but the persistence of them following us implies to me that our character is still struggling with this more than she may let on. The calendars are usually in the peripherals of the screen, on the floor, hidden in trees, and otherwise, which perfectly shows that feeling of the due date being right around the corner all the time. From here on out, we are tasked with collecting 10 calendars hidden around the environments. This unlocks one of the endings later on, the true ending, but the others are important to talk about as well. But we'll get there when we get there. Around the corner, as we attempt to reach the stairs, a man suddenly bursts out of a room in front of us. As he runs past us, he drops his student ID, which is blurred, but at least shows us he's a student and the name of their university. His room is an absolute mess. Furniture is tipped over, trash is strewn along the ground, and it's evident that he's been sleeping on his couch. This student is going through the same stuff we just were. We find out later that he is, in fact, in our class, but it's pretty clear that he isn't as confident as we are. After all, he prioritized this exam over closing and locking his apartment behind him. We'll meet up again later, so just keep that in mind. We reach the stairs and are finally shown proof that we are not on the top or bottom floor of the building, just confirming that the attic was not real and that it was very strange for the man to have been outside our window like he was. One small note, whenever we inspect the windows, our character always states that it's a nice day, and hopes it continues so she does well on her exam. But the weather doesn't have any effect on her performance on the test. It might control if she's late or not, but it won't control her actual grades. This is something called an external locus of control. Someone with an internal locus of control would recognize that the majority of their problems and responsibilities are their responsibility to deal with, regardless of what caused them. But someone with an external locus of control would look for things to blame as a sort of coping mechanism. I didn't do well because of the weather definitely being one of them. It's a very easy trap to fall into, so just be wary of that in your own lives. Moving down to the entrance of the building, we finally meet another new character. This is the receptionist of the building, and she's busy right now. But I cannot stress this enough, remember this woman. Seriously. Our character notably states that she's always been nice to her and has helped some students calm down about their studies. But unfortunately, she's on the phone, so we can't talk right now. On the wall, there is a bulletin board with many posters on it, though it's implied that this apartment is not a dorm room, and instead is just one near a college. This board still has a bunch of notices about the college. Aside from the ads and extracurriculars, there is a message from the apartment managers that reminds the tenants to not lose their apartment keys, as a replacement would cost a lot. I think this is a beautifully subtle and ironic outline to this game. It's a metaphor for our character's experiences with her own home. Despite it being her safe space, she gradually made it feel more foreign and manufactured to help her study. This idea of not forgetting the keys to your safe space is really interesting. It's a reminder to not forget that you are a real person outside of your responsibilities. And they're right, losing that connection would cost a lot, and we'll see just how much in a moment. We turn to leave and go to the bus outside, where it looks like the artists got a bit lazy or tired of their work. We approach the bus until it's revealed that the entire thing was a facade. The low quality of the drawing makes a whole lot more sense now. The paper disappears in front of us, and we're back in the stairwell, though it's much different from what we remember. In her confusion, our character trips and falls, the painted eyes along the walls almost mocking her. You didn't think we were done with this, did you? If we try to go back to our apartment, we can find that the door has been blocked with some mysterious characters laughing at us from the other side. I was going to save this for later, but I'll explain what I think is happening now, as it will be a while before the next natural break in the gameplay. What I think is happening is, between seeing the other stressed student and doubting her personality when thinking about her neighbors, she began to spiral at the top of the staircase, and her anxiety took the opportunity and consumed her. These people laughing at her are representations of her mental image of the people around her. It's the most common form of anxiety, the feeling that everyone secretly hates you and is laughing at you behind your back. This physical barrier, I believe, is the walls our character puts between her and other people in the way of solving this issue. We already know that this twisted world is just a manifestation of her anxiety and subconscious, so the idea that we were physically blocked from speaking to the people that we assume hate us is really interesting. This perfectly emulates that idea of stopping ourselves before we can even get started. Also, I think there's a decent chance this is related to her apartment being a safe space. In her apartment, she was more comfortable with herself since she knew nobody was watching, but as she got further away from it, the intensity of the eyes she thinks are always around her only got worse. The bottom of the stairs reveals a rather grim scene. Someone's arm has been severed by the elevator doors and is now laying on the ground. Our character doesn't have much to say about this, but I'll put in my 2 cents. This is a representation of what our character thinks will happen if they leave their comfort zone. There isn't much more to say about it than that. The first attempt to leave had this person's arm removed. Even if that isn't going to happen in real life, it's likely what our character overthinks about constantly, much like the calendars. Moving to the lobby, the scene only gets worse with... oh dear. The receptionist lays dead at her desk in a position that implies she was either attacked from behind, or what I think is more likely, a position that shows her reaching out towards where the exit would be. I don't think this is the receptionist trying to escape some horror. Instead, I'm confident that she is actually here reaching out to the stressed students that live in her building. We can pretty clearly see how well that ended up for her, though. A common response to offers for help to people with mental illnesses, especially anxiety and depression, is to block everyone out through the idea that we're a burden to them, a waste of time. This woman's involvement in our story isn't over, though, so don't forget about her just yet. Outside, there are more laughing figures staring through the window. This is the same as it was upstairs, but I think it's also amplified here due to our idea of pushing people out. This action can lead a lot of people to wrongfully believe that they are a bad person. After all, what kind of person pushes everyone out like this? Just another thing to be hated for. On the bulletin, the ads have been replaced with more nonsensical symbols and messages. It's a rather blunt symbolism for our character's self-doubt. I mean, one of the messages is literally, no matter what you do, it will always get you, sincerely yourself. We turn away and find the exit has been replaced with a dark, cavernous hallway. A note on the wall, in a surprisingly positive twist, tells us that failure is just another step. This note is likely from our conscience. Notably, it's one of the only messages around here that isn't covered or surrounded with blood, which I think supports this idea. The word failure is plastered all over the walls of the cave, and from here on out, I'm going by the assumption that everything painted in blood is written by our protagonist, or at least is a projection of her anxiety. I'm not going to get into it much, but let me tell you that I've had journal entries that look a lot like this. It can be easy to spiral even further when you think you're making progress, and sometimes writing about it only makes it worse. I'm not so confident in this theory, but I would like to point out that these are literal cave paintings, which to me implies that they're pretty damn old. This self-doubt and overwhelming pressure has been here for a long time, and has grown with our character. I won't spoil it, but we'll see that the stress has definitely increased in pace with her attempts to combat it. She had one small victory, so it adapted to hit her even harder. Down the hallway, there's a bit of symbolism I might need y'all's help with in the comments below. I understand the idea of wanting to destroy these textbooks that cause them so much stress, but why arrows? Arrows seem oddly specific in this situation, and there's no mention of them anywhere else in the game, so yeah, I'm at a loss here. But as with any of my analyses, you are 100% welcome and encouraged to comment your ideas about the game and my theories in the comments below. As if the previous symbols weren't enough for you, we encounter a giant spike trap in the final part of the hallway. I hate it when my landlord has renovations done without me knowing. Aside from the bad ending in the main game, this is the first time you can actually die. I won't be addressing all of the deaths as there's far too many and all of them could be chalked up to arbitrarily failing your journey of growth. But yeah, you can die here, and it isn't pretty either. I won't be showing these graphics as they are sometimes unnecessarily gory, but I do want to congratulate the artists on going to the effort to draw different pictures for each death that most players won't even see. If you really want to see them, I find them in my own playthrough, which will be linked below. Passing the crusher, we find ourselves in the basement of the apartment building. To our left, we can enter the break room, which is not as comfortable as you may think. Notably, there's no one here, except for more eyes peering in from the windows above us. Everyone else must be busy. The break room's television seems to be smashed into the wall, and despite being unplugged, is still displaying static. From what we can see, it almost looks like this TV was placed here to block a hole in the wall, which would make sense. It's literally using entertainment as a barrier from the pressures of school around them. This room isn't meant as a break from our studies, it's also a break from our stress. So it would make sense to force ourselves to find comfort in entertainment. To the right of the hallway, we can find a darkened study room, and upon flickering on the lights, a pit separating us from another corpse appears in front of us. In the corner of the room behind us, there is another student hanging from the ceiling by chains, and being forced to read a book. Both bodies here are symbolic of the feeling we get when we're forced to study over anything else. The hanging person is literally chained to their studies, and the corpse across the room has this massive, impassable divide between them and the access to the break room. There isn't much to say about it other than that. Anxiety can definitely amplify this feeling of being stuck to your studies, so it makes sense that there would be other students stuck in this manifestation of our thoughts. Also, in the pit, we can see there are some humanoid figures attempting to crawl out. These are the other students who were in a similar position to the corpse across the room who attempted to escape, only to fall into a pit of their self-doubt on the way. Using the key we found in the break room, we can unlock the chains holding the student up and stop him from being forced to read the book. We can only loosen his chains, though. The rest will be up to him. Much like our story, it's on us to free ourselves from our chains, whatever they may be. While a helping hand can certainly help lessen that weight, it cannot be relied on fully. On the bright side, these external forces can be the spark the person needs to begin their own journey, and we might have just been that for this student. Rather disturbingly, we can find a box cutter hidden in the book as the person drops it. I don't know about y'all, but a game about stress having a box cutter, a common tool for self-harm, is rather concerning. It's an unfortunately common response to stress, especially in young people. I would know. I may be overthinking it though, as there aren't many other references to self-harm in the game other than this. It might just be a convenient tool to help progress the story. At the end of the hallway, there is a locked door with the words, "Our future uncertain," written on the wall beside it. Considering the lock on the door is on the inside, I think it's pretty likely that this is another way for the game to show us how our character has pushed everyone else out. They were so scared of what might be outside their comfort zone that they've gone to the effort of literally locking themselves in and subsequently the outside out. On our right, there is a painting with a plaque next to it that tells us that its name is The Rewarding Loop. It's part of what makes these students feel so stuck to their studies. That wavering promise of a degree, a job, and external appreciation for their efforts. But often, instead of this being a healthy source of motivation, it often turns itself around and makes the person think that they actually are only doing it because other people want them to. Below the name of the painting, the author pleads for our help, and to let them out of this so-called rewarding loop. And so we do, cutting the painting open as it screams? I mean, I suppose this makes sense, right? Even if getting out of this loop is necessary for the student's safety, it's still a very difficult and often painful decision to make. That healthy step in life being masked in the idea that you failed, that you were too weak or stupid to handle the responsibility, when in reality it was simply too much for anyone. Behind the painting, we can enter a storage room where we find a ladder to help us cross the gap in the other room. As we cross the ladder, our character very astutely says that she feels like she's being watched. Is it just me, or do these eyes seem softer than the other ones we've seen before? I think this might be intentional. Like I said, this pit is of students who tried to escape and failed, so this might be a representation of them looking up at us as we do other students, thinking they're better than me. We can confirm that the corpse is, indeed, a corpse as we approach it, seeing the student's cause of death being crushed by dozens of textbooks. This is another instance of, if the symbolism isn't obvious here, I don't know what to tell you. The notepad beside him describes his final thoughts and the eyes in the pit behind us. He talks about how they are spectators to hell, the people who watch him suffer but prefer not to interfere. This is another example of that issue with assuming what other people think of them without actually knowing I was talking about earlier. While other people can help you get out of stress, no one owes you that help, especially not strangers. He likely thought everyone was watching him suffer, when in reality it was just his perception and assumption on them. Just because you feel like you're being watched doesn't mean you are. If we return to the television in the break room, we can use the hammer we found at the student's desk to break the screen and reveal a tunnel with a fourth room behind it. Entertainment was not only reinforcement from the outside world, but our avenue to experience it without actually stepping out of our comfort zone. The act of breaking it shows our character removing this band-aid solution in an attempt to actually make a difference and remove the lock that's keeping them in. This is further proven on the other side of the tunnel, where we find the key to leave. After taking the key, holy shit, is that water again? Are you fucking kidding me? The room begins to flood, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know why. We aren't drowning again, so this just doesn't really make any sense, really. Maybe this is a reference to being triggered about past traumas or things like that, where our character is literally relapsing on that feeling and experience of drowning, which is traumatic. I'd like to think it was our comfort zone's way of attempting to keep us in, drown us in sorrow so we can't actually reach the lock or something like that. But other than that, I'm out of ideas. Outside, there is another hallway with a warning urging us to run, ominously stating that they are here. If we blatantly ignore this message and turn to the right, we see another hallway consumed in darkness. With no light switch, all we can do is read the two sticky notes on the floor. One of them is indecipherable, but the other one is another message from our character who touts hopelessness again. They say no matter what we do, they can't escape this darkness, this feeling of being lesser than everyone around them. But that doesn't mean we can't try. Back in the main hallway, if we look behind us, we can see ourselves pacing in circles as we read our exam out loud. She's shouting out into the void, and I think this means two things. Firstly, it is another representation of her desire for help being met with an emotionless void as she refuses to actually try and meet another person and make a friend due to her preconceived notions about herself. And second, reading the exam out loud to nobody shows me that she feels her studies are pointless, at least to an extent. She's doing all this work, but no one is appreciating her for it. I'd also like to point out that we don't seem to recognize ourselves here despite it clearly being us with the same hair, which makes total sense. These intrusive thoughts and overwhelming self-doubt look ridiculous sometimes, so it makes sense that we wouldn't immediately recognize that the visuals in front of us are of ourselves. Finally, following the warning on the wall, we turn to the exit. As we approach it, though, the same pit in our stomach that appeared when we met the time monster appears. However, this time, the monster is changed. Instead of the impersonal concept of time, we are instead tasked with running from a mass of creatures coming from the darkness behind us. In our escape, we pass through many strange and nonsensical environments that don't seem to connect at all. Interestingly, every time you do this chase, the environments you run through are randomized. And because of this, I don't think any of them matter. My theory here is that this is just a visual representation of a last-minute hit of self-doubt and overthinking. Faced with the exit again, we remembered the previous fake exit that we hit a few minutes ago. What makes us think this one will be any more real? Further reinforcing this idea is that the start and end of the chase are both the hallway to the exit, implying that the various environments we run through don't even exist and were just made up by the physical manifestation of our self-doubt to keep us from escaping. Luckily, as we exit the basement, we find that it is, in fact, reality. We finally find a brief respite from the horrors, and yeah, I'm confident that we're actually in reality here. What I think happened is that in her panic and since she couldn't go back to her apartment, our character decided to leave for her exam through the basement, so that she didn't have to confront anyone on the way. It's on a smaller scale, but I know that I'm not the only one who's done this too. Take the stairs to avoid riding in an elevator with a stranger and things like that. Our character notes that she didn't even really notice that they had a backyard in her time living here, implying that she had simply been so focused on her college that she forgot about the comfortable things around her. She treated the outside world as something to be feared, and that resulted in things that were completely harmless being pushed out as well. Unfortunately, our detour was too long, and we find that we missed the bus. Luckily, there is a convenient taxi cab in its place, which we can get in to reach our university. The taxi driver, who has a familiar text color, describes that the bus was out that day for the college. This makes me rethink my whole theory from earlier about why our character suddenly panicked as she reached the exit of the apartment. I believe what happened was this. Our character reached the lobby and found out from the receptionist that the bus line was cancelled. This elicited panic, and subsequently the receptionist tried to calm her down and offer support, to which she ran back upstairs, abandoning the receptionist and smothering her only form of support. People with anxiety will often experience something similar. They'll have a good day and even have the whole day planned out, but one thing in their life goes wrong and they are instantly thrown into a spiral of panic and overthinking. This metaphorical wrench thrown in their plans surprised them, and they simply didn't know what to do about it. Back in the taxi, our character speaks to the driver. Despite us knowing it's our conscience again, our character doesn't seem to recognize him. He asks us why we're going to our university, and we coldly reply that it's for an exam. He asks us what we're so worried about if we've prepared for it so much. Our character replies that it's not the exam that she's really stressed about. It's more the memory of her previous experience with her last exam that's scaring her. It's a bit meta, but she's anxious about anxiety, if that makes sense. What's worse is she knows it's likely to get worse because it's already here, and she knows it isn't done with her. She blames the exam for her lack of energy. A reminder here about the external locus of control. It's not the exam's fault she overworked herself with her studies, it's her own. I'd also like to point out here, there's a band-aid on our conscience's arm. Again, this could be nothing, and just a sign of how he's been fighting for us for a while, but I want to throw in that little tidbit and idea of self-harm, at least having a little bit of a part in this game. If he is an extension of her, it would make sense that he would share her injuries, self-inflicted or not. Back in the cab, our conscience reassures us that all this stress will likely be worth it in the end. Even if we are destroying ourselves in our stress, it's for a good cause. He asks us if we have a dream, to which we reply we think we do. We don't really know what keeps us going lately, so it's easy to almost trick ourselves into thinking it's all for the degree. I say tricking ourselves because the real goal should be the happiest version of ourselves, but since we don't see that as a possibility, the degree will have to be good enough for now. He recommends that next time we see the monsters, we should remember the time we beat them and hold on to that. Thinking about the failures along the way will only doom our future. We did it once, so we can do it again. After a rather blunt exchange reminding the player that this man is our conscience, he wishes us luck and lets us out at our college, hopefully ready for something new. One quick note, by the way. Obviously, our conscience did not drive the taxi, and we didn't either. This entire sequence was either a dissociation or daydream in the taxi where our character imagined the conversation as if this stranger was helping her. It may come from an unhealthy place, but if this helped reassure her, all's well that ends well. We approach the college to see what I think is a graphic design mistake with the position of the text, as our character describes how stressed the building makes her feel. We return to the chaos as multiple roadblocks surround us. One of the doors is blocked by ropes. If the positioning is correct, this is the classroom we saw from the outside. The visuals of a classroom that lets you look outside but doesn't let you leave is rather fitting. In another classroom, we are able to find a whiteboard. Yeah, whiteboard. With some cleaning supplies to help us clean off the various obscured room numbers with the other rooms. Outside the window in the hallway, we can see our old friends staring at us yet again. I don't think their existence here means anything different than it did earlier, though it could be interpreted as her believing everyone is laughing at her struggles due to something she perceives as easy with the exam. To the right, there's a locked door with a keypad and the phrase, "This place is just stress," written around it. This text is mainly here to help you solve the puzzle for the code that definitely did not take me 20 minutes to figure out, but it is an important note that all this stress can cause students to villainize their university as if it were actively working against them. It's not. It's their own study practices and tolerance that is the issue, which doesn't speak badly on them, but it is just the truth. Using the room numbers and message, we are able to punch in the code to the door and walk inside. All these blockades and obstacles, none of them are real. All of them are made-up reasons to stop and go back home where it's comfortable. All ways our brain automatically works using the defense mechanisms we built up for it. We find ourselves in another hallway where our character seems a bit more positive. The darkness persists outside the exam room, so we move to enter before it can block us. On our way in, a man rushes out of the room, knocking us over on the way. This is the same person who ran past us in our apartment. In the worst meet-cute you've ever seen, the man, who I will be referring to as the student to differentiate him from our conscience, apologizes and explains that he has an exam as well, but was too anxious and was running from it. We empathize with him, but he's adamant on his stance. He's clearly fully in panic right now, so we attempt to reason with him. This is where the story, that until now was completely personal to our character, turns into a real shared experience between these people. In his endless apologies, the student says he couldn't stop him from coming here, whoever he is. Speaking of, there he is. Look at him. He's honestly kinda cute. Oh god, never mind, it's Jeff the Killer. He explains that they have already met, and that it's their fault he's here. He tells us to forget about the exam and college altogether. If it stresses us out too much, why bother? Before we continue, I want to explain who this man is. Where our stress and anxiety manifested as time and our peers, the student's demons manifested as an effigy of himself. It's not exact, but I believe this character's hood and hair is meant to be a sort of negative version of the student. It's what the student thinks of himself, and represents all the bad parts of him personified. The monster tells us just to go home, and the student starts to agree. But with our newfound confidence, we stand up for both of us. And so, our conscience returns to defend us once more. The monster immediately attacks him, and in classic villain fashion, yaps for way too long. Our conscience surprisingly doesn't recognize him, which would make sense since he isn't our monster, he is the student's. Nonetheless, he takes a pair of scissors and stabs the monster, freeing himself. The scissors break, and our conscience begins to think to himself. Here, it is implied that this is the same monster from the first game, but stronger and smarter than he was before. This is showing us that these different monsters, though they may be personalized to our own issues, are, at the end of the day, just stress and anxiety personified, and have the same source for every person. Our conscience recognizes that this is the same thing, just slightly different in behavior, but nonetheless, the fight continues. Disarmed, our conscience commands us to run, and we don't need to be asked twice. And so we race through a confusing sequence of rooms and environments, just to find ourselves at the exam room again. The same thing that happened in the basement of the apartment building happened again, where we simply had another last-minute panic attack. Getting body checked onto the ground by another student you don't know is an anxious person's worst nightmare, and so it sent both of them into spiraling simultaneously. The student's evil version of himself, his monster, is made up of all of his worst features, so it makes sense that it would be shown as attempting to kill her over a mistake. It's an intrusive thought, anger that came from the confusion spurred by the accident. And a reminder to those who don't understand what it is, intrusive thoughts are not real. The person who thinks them does not believe in them. They are awful thoughts, and it's a really traumatic thing to have to deal with. Luckily, between our newfound confidence and our conscience taking control again, we were able to make some distance between us and the student's monster. Now, what I'm not saying is that the guy wanted to kill us, and we obviously didn't run. What I mean is that these two anxious people had their own spiraling panic attacks, and it was simply represented as if it were a fight between them. I hope that makes sense. After the chase, we find ourselves in front of the exam room again. But this time, it is surrounded by a red fog with chains hanging above it. This view is our character's literal eyesight. The inside is dirty, with the chains holding her to her monster, but the outside, reality, is completely fine. Also, the chains have now moved out of the way. There's nothing stopping us anymore. Oh, never mind, it's this fucking guy again. But again, with the power of effect, stroke, white, size 3, our conscience comes to our rescue once more. This may feel like an outside force, but I want to remind you that our conscience isn't a real guy. This is literally our own character conquering her own demons. The monster falls to the ground, and we gather ourselves. Our conscience explains that he's always been there. It was just on her to call him for help, whether she did so intentionally or not. He congratulates her on conquering her fears again and ushers her towards the exam room. We step towards the door, hopeful for a stress-free future, until suddenly... the monster attacks us again. But this time, I don't believe it's for us. In her escape, our character abandoned that stranger to his demons, which quite literally weighs on her conscience as she goes to move on. The anxiety of abandoning this poor guy instantly takes over as she begins to overthink about what a horrible person she is. The monster supports this by saying, "You really should have minded your own business." By caring for another person like this, we put ourselves in a position to make things worse by adding another avenue for failure. We have our first genuine connection, and we're already running? We should have known this would happen. And so the monster gains the upper hand, knocking our conscience to the floor and threatening us before moving to finish the job. We have 3 options here, which all lead to the 3 consecutive different endings. They all have significant ending sequences, so I'm going to address all of them with the bad ones first. Our first option is to just do nothing. There is an invisible timer as the monster closes in on our conscience and prepares to kill him. And he does. Some stabbing and boom, we're back in our home. Except now, things are different. The house is mirrored and desaturated. Our character blandly says she needs to eat something. Walking to the kitchen, we reach for the handle, and we give up. We didn't just let our conscience die, we lost our will to go on. As much as our conscience was there for us as that guiding light and guardian angel, we needed to be there for him as well. If we stop thinking about him as a different person, it makes a little more sense. You can push yourself to do the right things all you want, what you think will make you and others happy. But you also need to be nice to yourself in the process. Abandoning your will to move forward in favor for the easier options leads to a miserable existence. It's no secret that one of the ways this can show itself is a loss of appetite. The literal action, or rather inaction, of ignoring one of your body's necessary functions just because resting is easier. And so we head back to the bedroom, and... there was no monster attack. This was all our fault. We left him alone and refused to learn after countless bouts with our own self-doubt, and he finally had too much. It's our brain's way of saying, this is what happens when you try to take the easy way out. What's worse is, after we react to the body, the door disappears. She completely blocks out what she saw or that she even did anything wrong and moves on. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and through the people, we see who else but our old friend, the monster, outside again. We leave for the bathroom. Our previous escape was there, and the 3 other doors are either gone or not an option. So we try it. The pressure was simply too much, and with no conscience, no inner driving force, we buckle under the weight. My interpretation of this ending is rather grim. Remember the line from way earlier in the game when we realized who our conscience was? I am him, and he is me. Leaving this exam and abandoning her friend was the last straw for her, and she was left alone to her monsters. I think the monster showing up outside was actually the student coming by to say hi or apologized. After all, he just lived around the corner. But in her conscienceless state, she only saw him for the mistake she made, and it crushed her. If she literally drowned, or if the suffocation of death is a reference to hanging, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that she failed. But this, of course, is not the true ending. So let's rewind the tape a bit and explore what I'll be calling the meh ending. This time, we choose to escape, again abandoning our conscience, but at least trying to move on with our lives. We lazily stumble across the classroom, the students all obscured and staring at us. Despite our rising anxiety, we take a seat at our desk and do the test. We do it because we have to, because everyone is watching. We finish our test and leave, brushing past all the other students just to escape. Behind her, the eyes still watch her, the weight still on her shoulders. But for now, she's fine. She did what she needed to. So why bother thinking about it any longer? Like this explanation says, she did it. She achieved her goal. But she knows that, deep down, this will happen again. This ending resonated with me the most, I think. I've been in this exact situation of going to the exam room, overthinking and panicking the entire time, finishing it, and immediately leaving. It's crazy how accurate it is that in those moments, everyone else truly doesn't feel real. And even if you know that no one is looking at you, and that they are all consumed with their own issues and thoughts, it still feels that way, and it's miserable. This got to me pretty badly. And yeah, I dropped out after finishing my fall semester. Between my mother dying, constantly feeling like I wasn't enough, and gradually dropping grades, I needed a break. Now that I'm on new meds and have found an avenue to express myself with these videos, I might go back. I don't know right now. I'd like to try getting a job for a bit and see how that feels, because right now college feels like that monster we see in the game. I want anything but to go back, but I recognize that I have time to think on it. And if I were a bit younger, I'd definitely feel more comfortable with this. I'll stop yapping about my issues since most of you have skipped past this by now. Maybe I'll add an on-screen timestamp to make your lives a little easier. But I just wanted to talk about why this game resonated with me so much. Anyways, let's continue with our final ending. After finding the final hidden calendar during the bad ending sequence, we can replay the final fight scene and finally see what the third option meant. This time, the Interactable lets us help him. A rather clumsy sequence unfolds as we dodge attacks and deliver some of our own until the monster completely deforms into a mess of eyes, flesh, and bones. It looks like we're going to have to go out in a blaze of glory until suddenly we hear heels running down the hall behind us. And it is revealed to be the receptionist? What the hell? What are you doing here? Why do you have a gun? What is happening? Our conscience asks her how they knew they were here, implying she knows them, but she doesn't have time to answer us as her fight with the monster commences off-screen. We are tasked with making a split-second decision to help our conscience or leave him behind to the monster. And what's interesting about all of this is the previous QuickTime events in this particular scene have separate achievements and visuals for if you fail that particular button press. Again, you can see those images elsewhere, but trust me, they are surprisingly graphic, even compared to the rest of the game. If you die in all these ways, along with dying in every way possible earlier in the game, from the Giant Crusher onwards, you unlock an achievement called Failure, Failure, Failure. This definitely is just a flavorful way of congratulating you in dying in every way possible, but I would like to point out that in each death, our conscience encourages us to go on and try again, but in this final QuickTime event, if we fail to help him, he has nothing to say at the death screen. Every death except the bad ending is non-literal, and are all various, albeit gruesome, alternatives to saying you just gave up. We briefly speak to our conscience before entering the exam room. He congratulates us on becoming stronger and not falling to our previous failures. We may have relapsed, but we're stronger because of it. He points out that he knew our previous victory was temporary, but that now we have something more substantial. She's a better person now, and stronger, too. We look at him and ask him not to go, but he insists that's how it has to be. He'll be back if we need him, but right now, we have a new path in life. One where we need to figure things out for ourselves. And if we've learned anything on this journey, it's that trying new things and braving stressful situations is usually a good thing. Our conscience is there to help us make difficult decisions and get us out of stressful situations. It's not there to live our lives for us. And so he leaves, and we are left in the exam room alone. This time, though, the other students' faces are more human. They are shrouded because we don't know them. But we know that our assumptions about them were just that, and they are actually normal, kind people. We're more confident this time. We sit down and complete our test, but this time, it's not because we feel we have to or something like that, but because we want to, because finishing it proves to us that we can do better. We acknowledge that none of these previous nightmares, fights, and horrific imagery were real. They were all just thoughts from another cycle of overthinking. We see that now. On the way out of the exam room, we find the student from earlier sitting alone at a table. And this time, instead of shoving him away and going back home to sulk like we usually do, we try something new. A frame from the final cutscene of this ending confirms to us that the receptionist was, in fact, the other student's conscience. I will get into why I believe this is the case in a bit. The scene notably says that before there was a ceiling, now the outside world. This confirms that the original game wasn't pointless, it was just a smaller scale issue our character had to face. Both were worth doing, and it was all in the process of growing as a person. Looking up, I see only a ceiling. But you know what? I'm okay with that. And so we have come to an end of the story of Louis Soak. There is an epilogue scene that teases another future DLC that shows the other students' perspective before they met, but for now, I'm fine with leaving this here. The scene doesn't add anything to our previous story, as far as I'm aware, so there isn't much to talk about anyways. If there is enough interest in this video, I will look into that when it eventually comes out. For now though, I want to talk about one theory of mine that I hinted at the beginning that I just really couldn't fit in naturally with the rest of this video. What was up with the consciences? Who were they, and why was the other student's conscience the receptionist? Well, in my opinion, it's surprisingly simple. I do want to say that I'm not 1000% confident in this theory, which is why I shoved it to the end, but I want to get it off my chest, you know? Remember when we talked about how the various monsters were just representations of our and the other students' anxieties and intrusive thoughts? Like how ours was our deadlines and our peers who we were scared of, and the students was the worst version of himself? Yeah, well, the consciences are as well, but instead they are just things we find comfort in the most. For the student, this would make a lot of sense. This guy was lonely, living in an increasingly messy home with overwhelming stress and anxiety plaguing him daily. He was likely left alone to deal with this, seeing as he was too scared to ask anyone for help, only leading him to spiral more and more. In all this chaos and perceived abandonment, there was one person who was consistently nice to him. The receptionist at his apartment. Whether she was just being nice or if she genuinely cared, his inner driving force began to manifest itself as this woman who was happy to see him every day and listened when he vented. Obviously, I will be proved right or wrong about this when the eventual DLC comes out, but I'm honestly pretty comfortable with this part of the theory for now. The part I'm not so comfortable with is our main character's conscience and why he looks the way he does. My theory is a bit of a stretch, and I know some of you find it annoying when I say that, but I never want to try to pass off a theory I'm not confident in as if I was. That would be lying. Anyways, in the beginning of the game, we can inspect our character's belongings around her desk. When looking at the boxes and books on the shelf above the desk, our character offhandedly mentions that it's a mix of her school textbooks and some manga about the human body. I don't read manga, and this is why I'm so weary about this, but I wouldn't say that our conscience would be that out of place in a manga or cartoon book. His quirky, spiky hair and more professional clothing leads me to believe that this may be a possibility. Anyways, this would make sense, because with her various methods of dehumanization to force herself to study, she still kept the manga around and enjoyed it. It likely became her only escape from the stress and anxiety she was experiencing daily. And so, when she needed him, her conscience manifested as one of those characters from the books she loved. I definitely want to hear y'all's thoughts on this because I definitely think there's some substance here. I just need some other opinions. Anyways, I am finally done with this video now. I'm sorry it took so long, I got stuck in mud and could not get out. I do hope you enjoyed my storytelling and analysis, and if you did, I have a playlist on my channel with more commentary and analysis videos for you to enjoy. I know a lot of my content isn't like this, I really need to make a second channel, but I do hope you enjoy the analysis videos that I do have. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave your thoughts on the game and my interpretations of it in the comments below. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you to our members who got access to my playthrough a few weeks early, and thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.